kids are just, their brains are amazing. They just know what to do.
She just wanted to feel connected to me, and that's what would be the most helpful.
I'm all about supporting parents. They're their child's first and best teachers.
And, it was for me that moment of like, ooh, I failed them. But I was like, oh no, I'm actually unlocking something really beautiful here.
That I'm reminding myself is so crucial to meeting my kids' needs, meeting my needs.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Sensory Play Reimagined, a podcast exploring how sensory play can help unlock your child's development and well-being potential. I'm your host, Rachel Rothman. I'm a mom of three. I'm a toy expert, and I am thrilled to have with us today Maggie. Maggie is a learning specialist. She has a master's degree in childhood education, a certificate in special education, and just a wealth of experience supporting children's educational journeys through everything that she's done for the last 15 plus years. So Maggie, I am so thrilled to have you. And maybe before we dive in, you can give a little bit more context on who you are, what you're doing now, before we kind of dive into everything.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll start, honestly, I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for having me. Rachel, you and I share so many of the same passions. So I don't know if I'm more excited to just be talking to you, but also, or if I'm excited to be on this amazing platform, for these products that I've used in my classroom, and have in my home for EduShape. So really thrilled. So as you said, learning specialist, ADHD coach, mama too. I would say that my focus is really just, working with students and families and, really giving them support and empowering, them to find systems and routines and approaches that really work best for them. I'm all about supporting parents. They're their child's first and best teachers. So to me, that's really where my heart is right now. And even though I do have a background in literacy and all of that, I'm really just loving this space of thinking about play and parenting and how we learn through all of that.
I love that. And I love how you said we are their first and kind of their most profound teacher in everything that we're doing. And it's not a job I take lightly. I know it's not one you take lightly. And, it's tough. It can be really challenging. So I applaud you on the work that you're doing. And I'm excited to extract some of your knowledge and share it with everybody, because I know it's been incredibly useful for me. Anytime I talk to you, I walk away with ideas and I feel, rejuvenated and regenerized. And it's not like in this way that feels so, sometimes it just feels like too much. Talk a little bit more just about summer. If we can focus a little bit more granularly in there, because we are off for summertime. It can be overwhelming for both the parents and for the kids. Maybe we could talk a little bit about just the setting and the context of the time and space that we're in right now. To you, what does summer mean, kind of in in the biggest sense as it relates to kids?
Yeah. I love the summertime. I love this topic because to me, for kids, at least in most cases, that academic pressure is not really in their life typically, right? Not the way that it is during the school year. And there's also more opportunity for boredom, and I'm all about boredom. It leads to creativity. It lets kids' brains relax. It really gives them the time to sort of explore at their own pace. And in some cases that's uncomfortable for some kids, but there is more opportunity.
And grown-ups.
What's that?
Is that and some grown-ups? I feel
Absolutely.
We feel that I know myself sometimes, even knowing that it's good for them, we see, people doing so much. And sometimes it's I had to remind myself, even just this weekend, we were at the beach and my kids were asking we don't have our we didn't bring we just kind of spontaneously went to the beach, and we didn't have shovels and we didn't have a lot of stuff with us. And at first they were like, well, what are we going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you think we can do? And at first I was kind of oh no, I didn't have all this stuff. And, my oldest daughter was like, oh, well, we could use our hands as scoopers. And, my son's like, I'm going to go and pick up some rocks to decorate. And, they were so creative in what they came up with. And, it was for me that moment of ooh, I failed them. But I was like, oh no, I'm actually unlocking something really beautiful here. So I think it's, not just the kid pressures, but also, the parental pressures of creating kind of these like situations that feel perfect, but that in fact are actually removing a lot of the educational and developmental opportunities for kids. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I'll echo that too to say that I feel like some of my favorite memories already of the summer were not so much the ones that I planned, but the ones that were sort of unplanned or that maybe we had plans and they were canceled. And then I'm trying to figure out something to do with them and we end up just not doing much at all. I can't tell you how many times my kids have just run out into the rainstorm. We've had so many rainstorms with us that just that summer you can't beat that summer rain.
yeah,
And to me, that's the type of play that I'm reminding myself is so crucial to meeting my kids' needs, meeting my needs, and reducing, like you said, that kind of pressure to like have something sort of planned at every moment because kids are just their brains are amazing. They just know what to do in those scenarios. It may take some kids a little bit more time, or maybe they need a little scaffolding to get there. But in most cases, I say that they usually surprise us with, you know, their amazing creativity.
yeah. I will say, I know that we both have, kids who love to get outside, be active, etc. What is there kind of like, again, before we kind of dive into everything, but just even getting them outside, do you have any advice for parents who like that might be a little bit of a struggle to get the kids outside? Like, what's your kind of framework for motivating and or incentivizing and or just facilitating getting kids outside to start with?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll probably hear me say this quite often. I think it's reducing the pressure and also making or framing like getting outside is, I hear a lot of times it's like, oh, I just want to like get my kids outside and like, get them away from, I need a little space, that type of thing. But I think if we engage in play outside, they sort of follow our lead. So typically if it's a little bit of a struggle, I usually make it seem like it's something I need to do. There's something I have to do outside. And I'm like, oh, I might need to do a little help in the garden or this summer, our kind of thing was a summer garden with vegetables and things like that. And in no way does it look pretty right now, but they've loved it. And so sometimes, if they're kind of uh resistant to that, I'll kind of give them a job. I'm like, I just like really need to check on those tomatoes. Those tomatoes like were green and I wanted to make a salad and do you think you could help me? And I think sometimes when we sort of shift the power dynamic there, then it's a little bit less pressure on them to be like, I need to just, have this big world out there that could feel a
Yeah.
little bit like overwhelming. They're not sure what to do next. So sort of following my lead, I guess, is the way that I would go about that.
It's funny, somebody framed it for me in a way that like really resonated. It was one of my children's educators of kind of like that transition time of like getting them from inside to go outside, and exactly as you just described, like giving a job. So all of my kids always get jobs, and then they feel like it empowers them. So then they become one of them becomes the door holder, even like,
Yeah.
and she takes this job very seriously, and like almost like to a place where I'm like, all right, we, doors, many people have gone through now, we're good to go. But just like the idea, like you said, of giving them agency, of giving them a task, of making them feel like they're actively supporting whatever it is, kind of in the grander mission. But yeah, so we have a door holder. I have one who we likewise have a not so pretty garden, but like the kids love it. And, it's also an opportunity for them to get their hands dirty and to learn about, having a variety of fruits and like there's so many things that they're unpacking by doing that. And just reminding myself like that in and of itself is such a beautiful gift that we're giving them. They're learning about food and nutrition and plants and, biology, and they're getting outside and they're being active and they're doing physicality and all these different things. So, I love that. And I love that you've started a garden, and we've done it now the last 3 years, and this is definitively our ugliest. And let me tell you, our kids are the most engaged this year. So it does not need to be pretty. It does not need to be perfect. But it is, and we've actually like created like a routine and a tradition with it. So they get excited, every year around the same time to do it.
Enjoy.
So it's something that they can look forward to. So I look forward to that for you as well. Enjoying that. Okay. So diving in, sensory play outside,
Mm.
do you have any examples or ideas that you can share with ways that we can get kids engaged with, nature? We talked about kind of going to the beach. Are there other things that you do either in your own home or that you make recommendations for the families that you're working with for kind of making outside more engaging, inviting, playful, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to me, sensory play can and in a lot of ways should be really simple. I say let them get dirty. I let them get dirty. If there's any chance you can find water, whether you're bringing a bucket of water outside, um, playing with the garden hose, filling up a kiddie pool. Water is very regulating for some kids. So something like that. I mean, really just keep it throwing some ice cubes in there. I really do keep it simple when it comes to that outdoor play. There's two things that come to mind though that I seem to get a lot of responses from parents that say like, "Wow, this is kind of like a magic sauce here." But one is like if I go outside and I busy myself with something, so for example, putzing around the garden, or if I start like organizing the garage, I notice my kids will then take it upon themselves to find things that are interesting to them. They'll sort of wander. One of my kids will go on the swings. Maybe the other one's, I have a 2-year-old, so he's playing with ants and squishing them in his fingers, like whatever it is. But they sort of do
My
that.
daughter development. It's good. It's good.
It's great. I love it. But, like, if I'm just standing there, like, sort of available to them, I guess is what I'm saying, is that they sort
Yeah.
of look to me to direct them. Um, so I just noticed that if I sort of, like, shift my direction towards somewhere else, it encourages them to maybe, like, feel like they're less on a stage or something. I don't know what it is, but, in most cases, I have parents who are like, "Oh my god, yeah, like, the second I start vacuuming, that's when my kids start playing with each other." So that's my like one big, bit. If you feel like your kids are kind of just like looking for your direction and you really want them to like sort of find that intrinsic motivation or, engage in their own interests, but they need a little support, I say kind of like get yourself a little busy doing something else.
I love that. I
Um,
love that. And so
and then
true.
secondly, like I would say if you're looking for that moment to play with your child and engage in that sensory play is like really allowing it to be child led. I think we also kind of feel a lot of pressure to be like, "Oh, look at this," or "Let's play with this water." But rather than sort of switching the like who's kind of leading the play there and just being more of the observer rather than the like facilitator of the play. So what this could kind of look like is, you see your child sort of like walk towards the pool, like a little kiddie pool or even the dirt, whatever it is. But my kids love to rip up our mulch, even though we pay so much money for landscaping. There's something about the mulch. So like, if I were to allow them to be child led in that sense, I might just be looking, watching, seeing what my 2-year-old is, observing, and then he picks something up and holds it to me, and I say, "Oh, what is that? Where are you going to put that?" More question oriented, just to kind of let them lead what he wants to do. And he's really not, I'm not sitting there saying like, "Oh, why don't we play with this ball or why don't we ride on the bike?" But more of like just sort of being engaged in what he's doing, being interested in what he's doing, maybe even just narrating what he's doing and saying, "Oh, you put the mulch on your legs. Is it itchy? Because I see him wiping it away." And then
Yeah.
he kind of like does it to me and I just go, "Oh, that feels so itchy." And so sort of just putting some language to what they're doing, but really kind of letting them take the lead there.
I love that. So many things I want to unpack with that. And I just, at the last thing that you said, it's funny, like, that's been very hard for me as a parent. Like, I know that that's not one of my best skills. It's like, I do want to kind of jump in and I'm like, no, 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 remind yourself, take a pause. And so a lot of times now I'll parrot back. Like, if they ask me a question, I'll ask it back to them in like an inquisitive
Love
way.
that.
So, like, my son this morning was like, why does I fill in the blank, it was a why question. And I asked him, I said, well, why do you think? And, it gave him that moment of pause. And then he started to, like, so for me, as simple as like, again, it's something that I had to like teach myself to do, but parroting back whatever questions they have. I have this desire to like want to give them all the knowledge I have. And I'm like, no, let them figure it out. Let them come up
Mm,
with ideas. Let them work through it because that's how they'll, kind of create that foundation of understanding and being inquisitive and being creative. So I do the parrot back a lot with the questions that you were describing. And then also kind of just like the narration of just like, I am an observer, I am seeing it and calling, attention to whatever is happening. And it's funny for my different kids, like different senses for them are kind of stronger. So like for one, I might be like, how does that feel on your body? She's someone who does not like tactile experiences. So like
Mhm.
I'll bring awareness to that for her and I'll be like, how does that feel? Does it feel rough? Does it feel soft? So that she's starting to build like the understanding of what feels good and what doesn't for her. Um, and then, again, depending upon kind of who my kids are, I've shared on the podcast before, like they all have different sensory profiles. So like depending upon who they are and what they're kind of attuned to, kind of drawing attention to that. But, and I know that we have talked about this before, but like bringing it out through the senses, how does it feel? How does it smell? Bringing it out through all of them, et cetera, I think is something that's really powerful and it helps them, again, observe and take in more and understand things better. And I did want to just say before before we jump that the ice has been magical this summer for us.
It's
So
amazing. I don't know what it is about the
it's like it's the like I mean we actually bought like a $5 jug thing that we leave outside for water play outside, so my kids have access to it on their own that they can like do it. And I'm like, worst thing, something gets wet, it's going to dry outside, all good. But we've actually brought ice not just outside, but also into bath. So our kids have been way more resistant to bath with like all of the transitions and everything that's going on, like during summer, no more school now and camp or all the things that are happening that are changing. And so we brought ice into bath and it has been like the one thing that gets my kids into the bath. So I had one who was like refusing and I'm like, do you think if we add more ice, like what do you think's going to happen? And I kid you not, last night, I mean, my husband wasn't too happy, unloaded the entire ice box. But one, it was like, it gave them a job. It gave them a task. It was a different sensory experience. It was like all the different things that it was so positive for, but like ice in the bath. So if anyone is having trouble this summer with bath time, ice in the bath has been very, very helpful.
It's a good one too, Epsom salts. There's something about the Epsom salts that my kids love to like rub in their fingers, and it's something that you can put in the bath that, if you get like one with lavender smell or something, it's like a little relaxing.
Yeah.
And that kind of happened really organically for us. We're not big bath people, but my husband had like an injury, so he was using it, and then my kids like discovered it in the bathroom. We all share the same bath. We only have one bathtub in the whole house. So, then they started throwing it in the water and I'm like, wait, this is great. Go for it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to circle back to just, that child-led and you describing how like we're kind of like also putting like that naming of the sensory. But I love to also put language of advocacy there because like you said, your kids have very different needs, so do mine. I have one kid who loves to get dirty. I have the other kid who does not like to get dirty. And so, narrating what those sensory feelings are that I always like to give them the language of, do you like that? Does that feel
Yeah.
good to you? Oh, you don't like that. Your face is telling me you don't like that. Even my two-year-old still trying to like learn to, put sentences together. So it's like, I don't like that. It's like, okay, so then next time if you feel something, you can say, I don't like that. And I think giving them the language for self-advocacy is also really, really empowering for them to not just learn what they're feeling and engaging in them in their sensory that way, but also giving them some communication tools there as well.
I love that. Yeah. Is there a particular EduShape product that comes to mind that as either a parent and or in the classroom that, you kind of go to time and time again or a favorite?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure what they're called, but they're the sensory balls that have like the little spikes on them.
That's it. The original sensory ball.
The
Yes.
original sense. I have never, if I didn't have them in my classroom, I ordered them. I paid with my own money. Nothing is like kids gravitate towards them. They like to watch them float. I even like, it's funny because I even like when they deflate a little bit because sometimes over time they get like a little bit squishier. Like I just noticed that the kids just like to hold on to it. They like to throw it in the bath. We've got at least 5 of them in our play pool outside. There's just something about them that they just always love to play with. And I've just made, we'll have them in this household forever and ever. I'll also say that I do in-person sessions for some students that I work with. And I always have them in my bag because I notice sometimes if they're feeling like a little bit fidgety or uncomfortable, I go, "Oh, could you just hold on to this for me?" And they won't let that thing go the entire session. So,
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, we have countless ones in our house, and also different sizes too. And it's funny, like we were just describing, like what are great open ended toys. Like the number of things my kids can do with these balls is, I mean, is impressive. Is
yeah.
impressive even to me. And it was funny with the little ones. My daughter had brought it over, like she was doing paint, and at first I was like, "Ugh." And then I was like, oh, let's see where this goes. And she wound up painting with them, and it came into like this really cool kind of like drawing. And then I was like, oh, and then I started making modifications to it, and I like threw it in a bin with some paint, and they were, like giving them kind of more tools around it. But I would not have thought the sensory balls plus art would have been this, like the synergistic moment for my daughter. And no shocker here, she's a sensory seeker. So like the combination of the ball and the feelings that she was getting with it, combined with the pain, combined with like this like creative artistic expression, was just like, a very happy place for her. So yes, I think it like beyond just like the tactile and the different sensations that they're getting from it, and feeling like, giving purpose to their hands that might be fidgety or all those other things. But, art, who knew? And that was something that she was really enjoying too. We were talking also about one of the big things that you're doing in terms of like supporting families, particularly those who have neurodivergence, is helping to support executive function. And I think that might be a new word for a lot of people who are listening. Do you mind walking through what is executive function? What does that mean? And then maybe we can go through some examples, how even with the examples you were just giving, you're actually helping to support that.
Yeah. So, executive functioning, the way that I kind of really boil it down for both parents and kids is, to me, I call them the learning to learn skills, or learning to get things done skills, I guess is one way of putting it. But it's really essentially something that we kind of all develop at a different pace. Neurodivergent learners tend to be, a few years kind of behind in developing some of those executive function skills. And this can be, I think we hear this term a lot. A lot of people assume or think, organization, studying, binders, things like that. But it can also be self-regulation. It can be sort of self-initiation, kind of being goal-oriented. And like I said, those getting things done skills. And right now, I think this is a great time to be talking about this, because a lot of research is really showing us that literally the best way to develop executive functioning skills is free and open play,
Yay.
especially in their most critical developing years. But even as, young kids and adults, we kind of need that space to develop these skills. So I think like, how do I say this? Kids who are like free playing and they're playing with their friends, or they're playing even by themselves, to us it may not seem like they're developing executive function skills explicitly, but even something like remembering the rules of a game, right, is building their working memory.
Even devising the rules of a game.
Or even like yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
devising the rules of the game. Or like we've seen kids make up games, and they're sort of changing the rules as they go along. To me, that's the we call that cognitive flexibility, that they're really working on. And then self-control is an aspect of executive functioning, and that part of our brain. And when kids attend to rules, or they're making their actions goal oriented, they want to like build a sandcastle. Those are all executive function skills that are being worked on and developed right before our eyes without it being explicitly taught to them. So I'm just so grateful that we have information now to really prove that, because the advocacy here in most cases, I think parents are looking for me to be like, give me strategy, give me this. And in a lot of cases, yes, we can set up a home environment that's like very conducive to the way that their child's brain is, and how their brains work, and where they're at independently with their executive function skills. But more often than not, I'm asking, when do we have free play? If it's not there, how do we add it to our child's daily, schedule. Basically, you got to schedule free play sometimes. But then also, how do we kind of scaffold and facilitate that free play? It really does. I mean, it changes the I know you like science. It changes the neurons in their brains and their prefrontal cortex during childhood. It's really prepping their brain to regulate their emotions, to make plans and solve problems.
I have to say, I have seen so much growth. I'm gonna get really teary eyed right now in all three of my children, just like in the last 2 weeks. And we spent the last 4 days, it was a longer holiday weekend. Um, and they were just coming up with their own games, like left, right, and center. And I watched my daughter, who has a little bit more difficulty with executive function skills, and she came up with the rules of the game. She narrated the rules of the game. She answered questions about it. They were like, my son introduced a new rule. She was cognitively flexible. Like, I just watched all these things happening in real time and recognized like how much growth was happening just in this moment of play. Like I literally, I was sitting there as a parent. I'm like outside the pool in my glasses crying. And I'm just like, absorbing the beauty of this moment. But like, I've truly seen play just unlock a child's potential. And how it was
It looks
facilitating.
so
Yeah.
bumpy. Like, I think
Yeah.
the thing is too is that it doesn't always look pretty and joyful, right? Like sometimes that
No, there
play
have been a lot of misses along the
there's,
way.
I
A
mean,
lot
they're
of
like
missteps.
arguing with each other.
Yeah.
They're maybe like unhappy with what maybe the family decided to do that day, but within all of those moments and experiences, they're learning to self-regulate. They're learning to problem solve. They're learning to perspective taking doesn't happen later on, but in a lot of ways we're sort of modeling perspective taking for kids. And those are all executive function skills that, I touch upon with the families that I work with. So
Yeah.
that's like a success story right there. Just,
We've had a
just
lot of bumps. We will continue to have a lot of bumps. They are siblings. There are moments of friction and all those things. But yeah, it was like one of these moments where I was like, wow, like I see what is happening before my eyes. And like all the steps that were needed in order to facilitate what was happening. And yeah, like, I think by default also in kind of the society we are in, they're going to ask and, naturally ask for the parent to kind of intervene at different moments. And, I'll kind of throw it back to them sometimes and be like, well, what do you guys think? Why don't you guys talk about it? It seems like she's feeling X, and kind of having the onus back on them to figure out, obviously, if something's unsafe or like those, that's a different story. But really trying to remove myself as much as possible. And again, that's a muscle that like I have to keep working on because it's not innate to me.
It's
So
building a little like frustration tolerance, I think, for us. And when we see our kids struggle, I think our natural instinct is to kind of swoop in and rescue or teach in that moment. But in a lot of cases, it's the best teachable moment to sort of watch them work through it,
experience and work through it.
and experience that frustration a little bit. Because when we shield kids from that, then they sort of don't get that. They can't. It's harder for them to develop that ability to sort of problem solve later on because they're kind of they become used to someone else sort of taking the lead on that, and,
Yeah.
and we want them to feel capable and empowered, and they want to feel capable also.
Right. Totally. All right, switching gears a little bit. So you do come from a very strong foundation and background in literacy. Do you mind kind of touching upon, I think this is one of the things, I have kids who are a little bit older where you're kind of nervous that they might regress in terms of reading and, as an expert within this domain, kind of what is your advice to parents who, want to make sure that they're doing the best for their children in kind of this regard? I just think like I always thought of like, the reading I got like the reading list and all these other things. Like what is your advice as it relates to kind of this realm for parents?
To start, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. There's so much pressure and a lot of fear around the summer slide. I mean, and we like feel that from the schools because like you said, their kids are given summer packets and these lofty reading lists and maybe even big workbooks. But I just say like take a deep breath, because I think in a lot of ways, curriculum has raised its expectations to meet state demands. I'd even argue that it's not always developmentally appropriate. So, like,
We're gonna have a whole nother talk on how broken our educational
yeah,
system
yeah.
is.
So to me, sometimes that external pressure to like make literacy and work happen over the summer um, does not match what I think the summer is intended to be for kids.
Mhm.
Um, of course, there are some kids, especially those with like a reading disability, who really do need repetition and consistency to keep up, the momentum and progress. But and a good tutor will ensure that's engaging if that's the scenario that a family is sort of managing. But I think this is a big topic that we could like really, really jump into. My biggest recommendation, honestly, would be to use the world around you as much as possible. Like, buy less, just use what you have, and read in some way. And I think audiobooks count every single day. So I would say like some examples of this is like, if you're about to write out a grocery list, like maybe you can equip one of your kids to kind of help you dictate that, right? And even like for the littles, like my 5-year-old, she can't write, but she'll sit there and I'll say, "Oh, we need strawberries on our grocery list," and she'll, draw a strawberry.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the exact list that you're following, but for them to sort of engage in how we use literacy on our day to day, it is, to me, it's kind of taking the pressure away from it a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, things like I play little games maybe where it's like I focus on like one letter of the week with my daughter, and we're like, oh, today's the letter S week, and what around the room may start with the S, but I'm not buying cards. I'm not buying packets of things. I'm not buying books that are like workbooks that are focused on her writing the letter S 20 times. School's for that, right? School will teach my kids how to read. I'm a literacy specialist. I'm not going to be teaching my daughter so much how to read. I want her to engage in literacy in our home. I think sort of we kind of can help equip it and learn to love it. So we'll look for, when we're grocery shopping, if we're focusing on the letter S, we'll be like, where can we find the letter S? And there's the big signs. For older kids, it may take a little bit more creativity. I think it's really great to help foster like what their interests are and giving them the resources for that. So, I would say like giving them opportunity to like get magazines of things that they like to read about, or modeling reading is so important in my opinion. We want our kids to engage in reading every day. Well, we should be doing the same thing. And I know it's easy to kind of say like, oh, well, I read the news on my phone, but we really want to show kids and model kids the importance of using the world of literacy around them.
I was just
One of
gonna
the things
say,
I did this summer, just as another example, the classroom teacher and me, and anybody could do this though, was, labeling her dresser. So she, I kind of am thinking about like kind of giving her some jobs and some chores around the house. And one of the things would be to put away her clothes. So, I'm thinking like she's learning to be reading in the next like year or so. So we decided to label her clothes, and she sort of helped me on the computer. We said, what does the word start with? I wrote it out for her. We did a picture of a shirt, and then we just kind of pasted it right
I
on
just did
the
this
side
with
of
my
her.
son too.
Did
They're the
you?
same
It's
age,
great.
for those who don't know. I
And she
literally
loved
just,
it.
it was his favorite activity, and he was so proud, and he called everybody in to see it too.
Yeah, and so just I mean, label things in your house. Make it kind of silly. Go on a word hunt somewhere and maybe hide words around the house with like post-it notes. But, to me, again, I'm all about keeping it simple and just bringing it into the world that we're living in.
I'm gonna give a twofer right now, because based on two of the strategies you already gave us. So I had not been reading recently, and like it was just I was overwhelmed by a lot of different things, in life, and I am a voracious reader and I missed reading. And a lovely friend of mine got me a bunch of books for my birthday. And I've been very active about reading it when I'm around my children. So, like,
Mhm.
one, I now seem occupied and busy. So they're, making themselves busy with something else. And I had it outside with me and I read 2 books this weekend. So I got through 2 whole books. How wonderful for me. And my kids were engaged in active play and they were seeing me being excited about a book that I was reading and not wanting to put it down. And it was funny, the last few nights, like all 3 of my children independently were like, can you read me a book tonight? Or could we read together? Or could we take turns or whatever? Like just even seeing the shift for them. And I was like, oh wow, like that was literally the only thing that had changed, in our day as it related to
Mhm.
books or anything like that. It wasn't like I had restaged it. It wasn't like I brought in new books or anything else. The only thing that really changed within that domain was just me reading. And it kind of like re-excited them about it. And literally my son came and curled up with a book next to me, because he wanted to then, participate with me in reading. And so it was really sweet. So I can
And
say,
that's a strategy you can like echo for a lot of things. I call that body doubling when I'm working with my families and students. We can even think about like a middle school and high school student who may have a summer reading list. Typically, most schools will ask that all kids in a certain grade read like 1 or 2 books over the summer. And so when you're engaging in the reading, you can slightly gently nudge and say, this would be a great time for you to be reading. Another thing that I just love recommending so much is that, and this is for those who have the older kids, but maybe I guess some elementary schools might have specific books for kids to read, but letting those school chosen books be sort of like a family book club. I think it's really fun when it's not just our middle schooler reading this book for school, but have mom and dad read it and have everyone talk about it, whether we're listening to it all together as an audiobook while we're driving in the car or going on vacation. But I had a family who told me that they took that suggestion and the books were so good. And he had a little sister and she kept asking for like the update after like every night that everyone would be reading. So in the morning at breakfast, which was the only time that they were all together, she would be like, okay, what happened in like the last 3 chapters last night? And she was just as engaged, and she's not at a reading age yet, but she was just as engaged in the story. And now this middle schooler is not just learning to enjoy reading and seeing his family enjoy reading with him, but then he's also learning the skills of storytelling, summarizing, really kind of having a purpose to that reading rather than it just feeling like a chore. And I think that's just a really cool way to like bring literacy into the household, even with, parents who have older students too.
I love that. All right, switching gears again, because I gotta extract as much information on as many topics as I possibly can for everybody who's listening. So summertime tends to be a time when families do take, potentially a vacation.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the, either potential challenges or struggles or ways to kind of prepare for it, as well as kind of some of the benefits or strengths or things that positive outcomes that can come from travel kind of as a whole as it relates to children?
Yeah. And actually, this is coming at great timing because we actually just took our first like family of 4 vacation together. So, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. I think my biggest
Talk about learning for
I
kids. There's a lot of learning for grown-ups too.
There's a lot of learning.
Lot
I
of these
think actually
experiences.
more learning for grown-ups here, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
My biggest piece of advice is really know your kids. Like learn who they are and be really attuned to their needs and plan accordingly to that rather than our expectations. I think I kind of went in with this like grand, like we're going to create memories. We're going to go to this water park and then we're going to go to the beach and then we're going to go here. But I think we often forget that as fun as these things are and our kids are having a blast, they can also be incredibly overwhelming. And when we travel, we're off schedule, our feeding schedules are off, our sleeping may not be as great as it typically is because it's a new environment. And so I think kind of like lowering the expectations to make sure that like, if our kid is kind of struggling at the beach, like because it's hot and they maybe like aren't eating so well, that it's totally okay to be adjusting your agenda or your plans for the day to say, you know what, they kind of really just need like a break from the sun and we're going to head back. And we were supposed to go to a park later, but knowing my kid right now, that might be a total disaster because I think, you know, in a lot of cases, I've just also seen and I've felt myself almost going there being frustrated. Like, we're at the beach, you're supposed to be having fun, or we're on vacation, you're supposed to be having fun. Like, why aren't you having fun? But like, you know, they're not going to, in a lot of ways, many cases, I mean, they're not going to say to us, Mom, I feel overwhelmed and I didn't eat well today. We're going to really kind of feel that more in their break down their emotions. And so, you know, kind of planning for that, just knowing who our kids are, what kind of, you know, makes them sort of off balance in a way.
Yeah.
And then I think another thing you and I talked about which I love is sort of like this thing that a term I've heard is the emotional vaccination. It's basically verbalizing what we might anticipate would be hard for them and then brainstorming ahead of time on ways that they could handle it. So, for example, like on the way to like like in the car on the way to like a theme park or something, you know, this can sound a little bit like, oh, I'm so excited for the rides today. That's like really, really fun. You know, there's usually a lot of people there and it can be really hot and we have to wait a long time sometimes for our turns. And that can be really, really tricky. So how can we handle this? And giving kind of like, I guess it's like that, like I said, the emotional vaccination, it's like presenting what might be challenging ahead of time, but giving them some tools and advocacy to say like, oh, well, you know, you'd be surprised what they come up with. But sometimes it's like, oh, well, I just need my drink of water. It's like, oh,
Right.
okay. Like, what could you say to mommy if you're starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed or if you're feeling tired? Okay. You know, and you kind of plan ahead of what could be difficult. And it doesn't mean that it's going to eliminate all the difficult things that happen, but it almost gives them, you know, just the skills to be ready for those tough moments.
I love that. And I think, you know, it's the previewing for them. It's involving them in being the problem solver for whatever may come up. And, you know, it was funny when I first heard that term, I like, you know, it made sense afterwards when we were talking about it and explaining it, but it really is. It's like they're getting a little bit of exposure to it. So then when something, you know, when the actual impact happens, they're more prepared for it. Their body's more prepared for it. They're mentally more prepared for it. They're physically more prepared for it. You know, like all those different things with it. And, you know, I've shared, I have neurodivergent children, and something that we do, which, you know, I know many other families kind of similarly do, is actually construct like an entire social story around it, you know, so for something that it's something that feels, I actually have one, I'll pick it up. So when people, you know, when we go away, I always create kind of we went away, so the Podell family.
Oh my God, I love this.
Oh, I literally have it for every trip we've ever taken. Anytime we're doing something that feels like very much out of the realm of kind of normalcy and typical and kind of routine for us, it's an opportunity to preview it. And in the social story, we'll map out like, again, we're going to the airport. There might be really long lines. There might be a lot of people. This is what it looks like to go through security. And then when we get to the gate, it might, you know, it might be really loud with the intercom and, you know, and then coming up also, again, like you described, kind of with the strategies and discussing it, we'll discuss it in advance. So we, you know, we'll collectively come up with when the intercom gets too loud, what's something that we can do? And it's like, oh, well, we can walk away and we can go to the bathroom where it's a little quieter, or we can go and put on our, you know, noise canceling headphones, or whatever it might be, and kind of doing it and then working it into the story as well. And that's something that we have found really helpful. But I think a lot of it too is like, I think we often forget, like sometimes we'll remember it is challenging for the child. Sometimes we forget it is challenging for the adult. So it's also, you know, like you said, lowering your own expectations, knowing that certain things may not go exactly right. But like, I know for myself, when I'm traveling, I don't eat as well. I don't sleep as well. You know, like all those different elements are happening to me too. And you know, I have better tools to equip myself for handling it, but like it's dysregulating for me too. And I'm not, you know, and I'm there and remembering that too, is helpful to kind of give myself grace in those moments of like, oh, I'm tired too, or oh, I wish this kind of went a little bit differently than, you know, more along the lines of what we anticipated. But I will say, having taken now several trips with my children, regardless of whether it's not the memory that I expected or wanted or, what envisioned, there's growth in every single trip. Like, and and sometimes it's going forward to go back, backwards to go, but whatever it might be. But like, I have never come back from a trip and my kids didn't come back with new skills, feeling, more independent, having greater autonomy, utilizing different skills in different ways. Like, it's just every single time I am amazed by it, no matter how, in my mind, how challenging the trip may have been or how exhausted it may have been. Like, of course, there are those joyous moments on the trip, and, I don't want to minimize those either. But regardless of how challenging it might feel in those moments, like, yeah, we may have had to leave the park earlier. We may have had to leave the zoo earlier, or whatever it may have been. Kind of like in aggregate, there is growth, there is memories, there's beauty, there's like all these things. And my kids actually love it. Like, my kids ask for trips all the time. I'm like, yeah, no, we can't go on a trip every day. It's not how we're like, love that you love going. This is great. Like, we went from you being apprehensive and a little bit nervous and whatever it might be to like really wanting that. But I'm like, unfortunately, that's not really how it goes. But no, I love that idea of kind of like, one, not just the exposure, incorporating them into the planning of it and understanding of it, letting them being kind of the person who's coming up with, the strategies that work for them. And like you said, sometimes it may be something as simple as, I need a sip of water, like, and I think we sometimes feel like it has to be, a big, massive something, but like for them, it might be, for one of my daughters, it's like, I can give her a bracelet. A bracelet. She feels connected to me. She feels grounded. She knows that like I'm there to support her, whatever it is. It's just like, she's like, I think we should bring some extra bracelets with us. And like, would that have been the first thing that jumped to mind to me? No, it would have been like, I need to make sure we have this next. We need to like, like all the different things. And I was like, she just wanted to feel connected to me, like, and that's what would be the most helpful. So
And the
anyway,
thing about that too is that, I think when we bring them in also to like the planning of the day, like it really kind of empowers them to think about their needs too. I'm all about, I really encourage families of all ages, when we have that internal dialogue, actually like
say
verbalize
it out
it.
loud.
I love because that helps develop this, what I call the internal dialogue, or like the brain coach. That's an executive function skill where we're saying, okay, today we're going to the beach. What do we need to pack? I mean, we know what we need to pack. But when we engage our kids to say, okay, what do I think I need? And, then, my child will be like, oh, a towel. Okay, do we have our towels? Where's the bag? All of those things are part of the learning process, that, is kind of, like I said, low stakes, low pressure. And it allows for them to, sort of see what goes into the planning of a vacation or the planning of your day, and allows for those moments. I think if we sort of try to orchestrate everything on our own and then we go have fun, that's a lot of pressure on a kid to be like, especially if it's like a new environment, and and I know like my kid is very different. I have one that will just run into any new situation happy as can be, and another one who's an observer. And if I were to just say, go play and have fun, she would be like very put off by that, So when we sort of verbalize what's happening in our own internal dialogue and bringing them into it, then again, it is emotionally vaccinating. Okay, I know what I'm going to expect for my day, even if we don't have a perfect schedule. But we can say, okay, we could go to the beach and then we'll see how we're feeling in the afternoon. Maybe we'll want some quiet time, or maybe we'll still feel like we have a lot of good energy. Maybe we had a good lunch and we would be totally up for going to the boardwalk later.
Right.
But I think when we kind of bring them into like that internal dialogue that we have, it sort of gives them opportunity then to, you know, really enjoy the day.
Yeah, no, totally. And I will say one further is, for some of my kids, it's enough to just verbalize it. For one of my children, like, she really needs to visualize it. Like, she needs to, like, the words have to connect to the visualization of what's happening. So it was funny. We were going to the beach and I was like, okay, let's picture we're at the beach. What are we going to, like, and kind of walking through each of the steps. But the actual like creating the vision in her mind is something that is, yeah. So again,
It's a wonderful strategy. It's amazing. You could kind of really apply that to anything, going to the park, driving to
right.
school, right? Like
Yeah.
anything, not just vacations. That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So we're in summer. We maybe go on a vacation. I'm going to have to bring it up and maybe we could get you're like, up and up.
I know it's coming.
Yes. Yes. If we could talk about screen time a little bit. So, I kind of, again, I appreciate and respect your philosophy and I try to mimic it as best as I possibly can. But for those who are unaware, do you mind sharing kind of like, what is your kind of perception around screen time? What is your advice around it? Any suggestions for it? Because during summer, it tends to creep in if we're not super cognizant about kind of what's happening. And again, any kind of strategies or thoughts or advice you have around that.
Yeah. It's a topic I'm actually pretty passionate about. And I know the reality of it. Like screen time is here in my home and I use it. I use it for my own survival. I use it because my kids enjoy it. I will say, you'll never hear from me recommend like a phonics app or a math video game. Because to me, nothing really kind of matches the real life reading, the socialization, the hands-on learning. But I guess what I will say is that I don't think that all screens are created equal. So when I refer to screen time and to me, the really like a limit, like really taking screen time kind of like out of the daily expectation. When I say like screen time, I'm really kind of referring to like YouTube, video games, social media, right? TV, I'm totally think that it like has its place. We can really enjoy TV together with our kids. Sometimes it's a total necessity in some families' homes, especially for, when there are parents who are juggling very busy schedules. As long as it's intentional, I think like if we're choosing intentional TV shows that we make sure aren't overstimulating or exposing, content that's not maybe appropriate for our kids, that's one thing. But when it comes to the other stuff, the other screen time, I'll get really sciencey and just share that I think we've been a little tricked sometimes. Parents have been told that social media or screen time can be regulating. I think we have also been told that there's like educational things that kids can learn from it. And I don't doubt that they can. But it can actually really do damage if it's taking up more of their time to me, it's like, what is that screen time taking away? Is it taking away being outside time? Is it taking away free play? Because then if it does, then I have a problem with it. I have a big problem. And I really want parents to sort of revisit that. I mean, it really kind of, the way that it's designed, the way that screen time is sort of made, it's like, it really is designed to give kids such high levels of dopamine to keep them focused, to keep them hooked. And so with these young developing brains, they're sort of then being programmed to need these high levels of dopamine to be self-regulated, to be attending. So to me, the outcome, the impact of too much screen time that's not intentional, that's taking away time that could be free play or social, like real life socialization, we need to make an adjustment there. And I know it's a tough cycle to break. I know that for some families, there is a lot of dysregulation around screen time. So I feel that. But, I do kind of think that as parents, sometimes we have to make hard decisions for our kids and, basically take things away from them that they really enjoy because we know it's best for them. And I have a lot more to say about this, but I feel like you have always like so much good, like, response to what I've shared so far.
Yeah, no, completely. And I, like you said, it's not easy. It's not something that is simple, notably in our society. And I think like, again, we had an influx of technology and screen time and all these things simultaneously with us moving away from kind of like the community model of like, kids being able to just like run outside and play with their neighbors and all these other things. Like there have been a lot of constraints that have shifted and changed and evolved over the years that have like kind of created this environment that makes it has created this. But I do think like, again, kind of the intentionality of what they are watching, like we can help support that. We can put, kind of parameters on the different devices that are going to kind of limit kind of the externalities of what they're able to get into. There are ways in which you can kind of lock them into certain programming or, again, make design it so that there's more of the Daniel Tigers versus the, again, going on social media or whatever, or the YouTube, unboxing or whatever it might be. But I do think, like you said, they're getting this high from it and they're getting the kind of dopamine hit from watching all this, and then kind of the craving levels kind of rise for it. It's interesting when you say it that way. It's like, would you give your child something that is not great for them in any other scenario? And the answer is, likely no. So again, I am not minimizing the challenge. And in our house, we do have screen time. It's like you kind of described, it is with intentionality. It is content that, that I have screened, et cetera. And it's hard. It's really hard. But I do think, like you said, summer's a great time because we can get them outside. We can get them playing. Like my kids, I know I can keep in a pool for the entire day, so great. I will let them play in the pool for the entire, it was raining this weekend. They were in the pool. There was no thunder. It was raining. They got the rain, a love of it and being in the pool. Whereas, other opportunities, it might not be, as simple as that, but like during the summer, we really do try to get them engaged and kind of play as much as we possibly can as it works for me, like as we're able to. And like you said, there are moments where that's not a possibility. And for other people, it's not a possibility in different scenarios, and being aware of that. And that every situation looks different, and that's also okay, and understanding your child. So just questions that we ask at the end of each episode, because I always find it so kind of enlightening to hear what people were interested in themselves as a child. And I think that it's so indicative of like who we are. Like it really shows kind of, we are wired the way that we're wired. We all are kind of like, I even think of like things that I liked versus things my siblings liked, and who we wound up becoming and what we wound up doing. It's just like very funny when we look through the lens of toy. It was so predictive of what we wound up wanting to do and our passions and our interests and all those things. So with that, was there a favorite play activity that you had as a child? Was there something that you gravitated to all the time, and or that you were passionate about or brought joy to you?
As a child, I kind of grew up in the generation where where parents like did not engage in much play with us. And it was kind of like, you're outside all day long and I'll see you for dinner. So to me, I would always gravitate towards building for some reason. And my sister and I would build forts, and we would constantly modify the forts and, bring our friends into the forts, and they would have to have like everything that needed to be there. So we would build, we would try to build tables. I think it also helps that my dad he built homes. So like we would maybe try to emulate that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think just using nature as our basically the best toys that we could get our hands on. It kind of remains the same for my kids too. You will never come into my home that I try to, as much as possible, keep clean and not find some sort of sticks or rocks or something also in their play space. So to me, nature is their best playground, their best source for toys per se.
Love that. So thank you again so much.
Thank you. This was so fun.
This was great, Maggie. Thank you. Thank you for listening. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And you can visit our sponsor, EduShape's website and social media pages for more insightful conversations on all things toys and child development. Thank you.